Mom posts her concern about daughter's stepmom on Facebook. Ends up getting viral. A relationship is a two-way road, demanding mutual love and respect. But more often than not, under the spell of diverse factors, relationships tend to get complicated. One such thing is when children get caught up in a broken marriage. From an ugly divorce, custody battle, to new girlfriends, everything is bound to create chaos. However, this may not apply to every family. One such family belonged to Audrey Loving, who married her high school sweetheart, intending to spend her life with him. Except things don't always work out the way we expect them to. Audrey Loving met Corey Henry at the tender age of 18. Their story is one of those classic high school romances. Audrey was the shy new girl in school, and Henry was the famous jock that every girl had a crush on. It was love at first sight for both of them. Audrey was never much of a romantic, but that evolved after meeting Corey. She could feel this is the start of something beautiful. Audrey had only read about the things she felt when she was with Corey. It was just little things, how her eyes would always search for his face in a crowd, or how his voice is the only thing she wanted to wake up to. Even though they had just started dating each other, she felt like she had known him for a lifetime. She had never been so sure about anything in her life, but this she was sure of. She was madly in love with this boy. Audrey and Corey's love had only grown with time, bringing the two closer than ever. The weekend before spring break, Audrey and Corey decided to go on a hike. Now 20 minutes in, Audrey had started to rue her judgment. She was exhausted already. The mountains lay in the distance, kissing the horizon. Audrey was excited to reach the top of the trail to see the view Corey had been talking about all week. He came here often with his buddies from college. After the relentless struggle of climbing up the trail, Audrey and Corey had finally reached the sunset point at the top. Audrey's eyes opened wide as she stared off into the distance. It was beautiful. She allowed her eyes to wander along the hills and valleys covered in lush trees. Corey had not been exaggerating. The view was breathtaking. She turned around to see Corey's reaction to the view and spotted him on his knees with a ring in his hand. Corey proposed to her as the sky changed its color to rich hues of red blended with purple and crimson. Audrey was so overwhelmed by this gesture that, for a good minute, nothing came out of her mouth. Audrey finally managed to form words and screamed a yes. As Corey put the ring on her finger, Audrey felt like she might pass out from all this joy. Her brain was already planning the wedding inside her head. She had never known happiness quite like this. Although they both knew they will have to wait until they finish college to organize the wedding. Audrey and Corey got married the same year they both graduated from college. Audrey had found a friend in her husband, and that's all she could ask for. She was grateful for everything. Things were going great between them, and soon they became the parents of a beautiful daughter. They decided to name her Riley. Their cute little family was living the best life. It wasn't until Corey got a job away from home when things got slightly off with them. Audrey was concerned it might not be the best idea for him to stay away from them for so long, but at the same time, she knew it was an opportunity he cannot let go of. Audrey had always encouraged him to follow his dreams, and nothing had changed even now. The couple promised each other that distance will not break them. They would always try to stay in touch and speak to each other every day. Audrey missed Corey terribly. She was so used to having him around that it never occurred to her how lonely it might get without him. But they were both trying to make it work, and that's what mattered. Unfortunately, the phase of making things work didn't last forever. More often than not, their phone calls would end with arguments. They both missed each other but didn't know how to be in touch without fighting. There were good days too, but those were so rare they stopped making a difference. As a result, they would go by without talking to each other for weeks. Despite their best efforts to keep their relationship alive, Audrey and Corey were struggling to do the same. To avoid conflict or arguments, they stopped talking regularly, which was not easy on the relationship. Distance and the stress of everyday struggles was slowly getting to them. Corey was gone more than he was around, and Audrey felt alone and frustrated with everything. The couple finally concluded that their marriage is not going to work and made the difficult decision of parting ways. Corey was going to move out full-time. While it was the best decision for them as a couple, they were worried about how it will affect their daughter. They decided to co-parent their daughter to the best of their ability. Audrey received custody with mutual agreement, and Corey determined to be as involved as possible from the distance. He will come down on weekends and spend time with his daughter. This was the best system they could come up with given the circumstances. Gradually, they got used to this and their little family was somewhat functional again. Just when it felt like things have finally begun to act normal in her modern family, including Riley's happiness and a sense of functionality in her life, Audrey got some news that changed things for her. Turns out, Corey had started dating another woman, Whitney. Audrey was aware that Corey will move on and so will she, yet somehow this news hurt her. She did not expect him to move on so soon. Audrey did not feel ready for Corey to move on. However, this was the least of her concerns. What disturbed her more than him moving on was the fact that he had brought another woman in Riley's life too. She was concerned Whitney might be a bad influence on her daughter. Things will get confusing for her. She was just a child after all. As things got serious between Corey and Whitney, Riley got more used to seeing Whitney around. Every weekend when she would visit her dad, she would spend time with Whitney as well. For some reason, Audrey thought she should make it clear that Riley is her daughter and Whitney should remember that. Audrey would make sure to text Whitney and instruct her with things that Riley needed. Her instructions would be on absurd things, like telling her to not leave Riley alone in the washroom, to not feed her candies past 6 p.m., to look after her night routine, never let her stay past her bedtime, etc. Audrey's precise instructions over text to Whitney went on for a while. To her surprise, Whitney never once got irritated about any of it. She would always respond to Audrey's messages politely, no matter how ridiculous her instructions might be. She would grant all of Audrey's authoritative wishes, keep her updated about Riley from time to time, and send her pictures of them together. After seeing Whitney's kindness towards Riley, Audrey began to wonder if she was being too hard on her. She realized Whitney was nothing like an evil stepmother. Instead, she was too kind to Riley. She always took care of her. Audrey realized she was being too critical about Whitney. She did not want to associate herself with the stereotype of a mama bear. Neither did she want to villainize Whitney, who had been nothing but sweet to her and her daughter. Audrey felt guilt reaching up to her throat. She knew she had been a dominating monster to Whitney, who had been nothing but kind to her and Riley. Feelings of empathy grew in Audrey's heart towards Whitney. She could understand it is not easy to parent someone else's child, but Whitney never let that feeling exist between her and Riley. Audrey recalled her own childhood experience about when she was growing up, how she had always heard negative talk about the other woman and did not want her child to go through the same experience. She knew Riley liked Whitney and they had become friends over the past couple of months. She was happy that her daughter had one more person who could love her so much. After this realization, Audrey saw Whitney in a whole new light. She had gained perspective and grew soft towards her, so much that she decided to post a picture of Riley and Whitney on her Facebook. She posted a picture of Whitney and Riley, and her caption said, "This is my daughter's father's girlfriend. The sweetest thing ever. I'm super thankful for her because when my daughter visits her dad, she feeds her, takes care of her, buys her gifts, and takes care of her like her own." Audrey continued to talk about their co-parenting situation. Why do all these moms act so spiteful and jealous towards the other women? No one said it was easy trying to be a mother to a kid you didn't have. So when someone is trying, don't push them away. Because they don't need the drama, they will leave and then you're stuck with someone who is the evil stepmom. Audrey mentioned how people should let go of the drama and learn to love more. Yes, they exist. I see them everywhere. A kid can have two moms because in my eyes, the more people that love her, I'm happy. I would never make her feel like an outsider. I'm extremely thankful for this girl. Ladies, grow up and focus on being a good mom. Love more, hate less. Feelings of understanding and thankfulness flooded her phone. People were praising her for her positive and welcoming attitude towards Whitney and the role she had played in her daughter's life. It would have been very easy for Audrey and Whitney to get caught up in the drama and make each other's life hell, but instead, they grew to have a positive relationship. Audrey's post managed to catch the attention of so many people that it went viral. The post had nearly 70,000 likes and 9,000 shares. She received more than 5,000 messages from people who were in similar situations and were open to discussion. Despite her best efforts of trying to reply and talk to everyone, communicating with 5,000 people was a bit out of her control. Ever since her post went viral, Audrey would post on her social media channels all the time to promote love more, hate less. She was approached frequently by so many people that she felt like she had a lot to say, but she cannot talk to everyone individually. So her source of communicating was by posting on her profile. She would talk openly about how Whitney and Riley have developed an amazing bond and she is proud of her little family. Now that Whitney and Audrey were on really good terms, they would often meet up and take Riley out to the park or the mall. Once in a while, they will even have dinner together. Riley could not have been happier with this new arrangement. And for Audrey, all that mattered was how Riley was immensely loved and surrounded by people who care about her. Corey was delighted to see how welcoming Audrey and Riley have been towards Whitney. He was afraid when he started dating Whitney about how Audrey might react, whether Riley and Whitney will get along or not. He did not doubt that Whitney was amazing, but given the history shared between Audrey and him, he was a bit nervous. But of course, he realized he had nothing to be worried about. Corey was happy everyone was getting along and it felt like one big happy family. However, there was one thing that Audrey was not aware of. Whitney and Corey have been having some difficulty getting along recently. He didn't think it was going to work out between them. But now he was afraid to talk about it with Audrey as he could see how Whitney had become a part of their family. Despite everything, Corey and Whitney have been trying to make it work. They have tried to talk about it to each other several times, but their conversations seem to be reaching nowhere. Corey believes that sometimes you just fade out into nothing for no particular reason, and maybe that is what is happening to Whitney and him. They care for each other deeply, but sometimes you just don't click, and this was creating distance between them, one that cannot be bridged. After an exhausting period of endless discussions without reaching any conclusion, Whitney and Corey decided to part ways. It was a mature decision on both of their parts. It didn't matter how much you could care for someone, but sometimes you have to be strong enough to let go. They decided it is better if they don't try to be friends, but they will always hold love and respect for each other. Whitney and Corey's breakup was sad for Audrey. Riley, on the other hand, was not entirely sure what is happening. She was just a kid after all. Audrey was worried Riley will miss Whitney's presence when she sees Corey on the weekends now. Riley might have questions that Audrey won't be able to answer, and settling thoughts were invading Audrey's mind for a while now until finally, Audrey decided to keep everything the same for her daughter. Riley should not have to lose Whitney just because she was no longer with her dad. Riley and Whitney had a relationship of their own which Riley should get to keep no matter how things change between Whitney and Corey's relationship. Audrey decided to discuss this with Whitney. To Audrey's surprise, she didn't have to convince Whitney for the same. Whitney was very much on the same page. Whitney wanted to be there for Riley as well and didn't want to lose touch with Audrey just because she was no longer with Corey. They have developed a respectful relationship between them and Whitney didn't want to lose that either. Things were back to functional with our modern family here. Riley still hung out with Whitney and there was no awkwardness between Corey and Whitney, which meant sometimes all three of them would hang out just like the old times. Corey was thankful to Audrey and Whitney for handling things so gracefully. He was worried about how things will work between them after the breakup, but now he was relieved to see they were getting along like the usual. Since Audrey's post about Whitney and Riley's relationship went so viral, she felt the need to post a follow-up post on her Facebook. She said, "Unfortunately, Riley's biological father isn't with this awesome woman I bragged about and went viral over, but she will always be a part of Riley's life. I don't care who she ends up marrying, but Riley will always be a part of your life. I love this girl and whoever dares messes with her feelings is in big trouble because you have to go through me." Audrey continued, "I will always have a weak spot in my heart for Whitney. She is my family. I repeat, you mess with her, you mess with me. I hope you ladies learn from Whit and me that you can make it work. You can make those complicated relationships with the other spouse happen." After her previous post, Audrey received a lot of questions about what will happen if Corey and Whitney split up, and this felt like the right time to address those questions. Audrey wrote, "So for those of you that asked, so what happens if they break up? Your answer is nothing changes. We did it and we will continue even though my child's father isn't with her anymore. She is still and always a part of her life, so it's worth it." Audrey ended her post by saying, "Thank you for all you have done and will continue to do for my daughter. Riley and I love you, Whit, forever and always. You are beautiful inside and out." Audrey was showered by lovely messages and comments at her post. People admired her openness about everything and how she set an example of everyone out there in similar situations. She put her kids' happiness above hers and built an amazing relationship on the way. Co-parenting after a divorce can be challenging, especially if you have to deal with a toxic ex. However, in cases like Audrey and Corey, we can see what happens when parents put their kids' happiness above everything else. They, along with many other people, have set an example on how it is possible to be there for your kid without making them choose between them. When co-parenting is done right, it is an amazing influence for their kids. Even in those cases when parents cannot remain friends, some people try for the kids, because at the end of the day, that's what matters. It is up to you as an individual to decide what values your kid is going to be brought up in. Pushing your past aside and working towards a healthy future should be a priority for all.